Selling your niche business is a great strategy. It's a great way to have an exit strategy if you build up your niche to the point where you're ready to move on. It's a great way if you just have put in all your effort and you're ready to just give up and go on to something else. It's a great way for you to actually make a little extra income. Now, do want to caution you before you go to the extent of selling your business, if you are ready to quit on the niche you chose, make sure that you have put in ample time and opportunity, because building up any kind of an online business does take time, it does take effort. And many people do forget this part of being able to sell it. And so that would be one good reason. Another thing is you could do this as an entire business model, is build up these niche businesses and then turn around and sell them. And a lot of people forget that they are building an asset. Your email list, your traffic, your website, that is an asset that could be sold. Even a quote failed website in your eyes is worth money to someone else. As they always say, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and that is so true when it comes to selling your niche business. And again, be careful not to quit your niche site too soon. Pricing ideas for your website. For example, let's say for these examples, giving $1,500 a month profit and $100 a month profit examples. So let's say because of this, when you sell a website, it's more based on what the profit is. And also, if you do have a website with a good amount of traffic but very little profit, that's still okay, because there is still value in that traffic. It could just be that you haven't monetized the site appropriately. Now, if you followed along with how to monetize your niche already, you should have already have things in place that are so your site is monetized well. But if you're not, then this training will help you. So for example, if we give you $1,500 a month profit on your site, and then we have another example of $100 a month profit, here's where we're at. A well-aged website with high traffic and no revenue, that is actually still very, very valuable. So keep that in mind. So let's look at another example, at other examples of sold sites that are out there. So let's go through here and say that some website businesses, so there are some website for sale marketplaces that say you could actually take a 3 months average net profit for your business. So you take the last 3 months, and let's say that averages out in this example to $1,500 a month. That would be kind of, a niche market that maybe you've been working on for a while. We're going to multiply that out times 20, and that would set a reserve price, meaning the minimum that you would want to sell your site or what your site is worth, at $30,000. And the reason I'm giving you two examples is, one, so you can see on a lower end if your site was generating 100 a month, and then the other example I'm giving is if it was 1,500 a month. And then obviously as it scales up, it could be 4,000 a month, 10,000 a month. By then you've got an asset that's worth quite a bit there. So if you do that, in theory, a website that's making $100 per month, if you, the 3 month average, so the last 3 months that your site made a profit, the last 3 months that it made a profit, you would multiply that by 20, and that would give you a reserve price of $2,000. And again, the reserve is the minimum price you're willing to sell your site for. Another method that some people do is two and a half times the annual earnings. And so annual earnings, let's say that your site makes a profit of $1,500 a month on average for the whole year. So you multiply that by 12, and that comes out to an earnings of $18,000 for the year from your one website. So you would take that $18,000 and multiply it by 2.5 times. That gives you a reserve price of $45,000. Another example, let's say the $100 example, so that's $1,200 a year times 2.5, that gives you a reserve of $3,000. Now, the reason I'm kind of throwing these numbers out here is not to just confuse you, but to kind of demonstrate for you that there are so many different ways to evaluate a website price, and these are all different websites that I've actually seen and researched. In fact, the one above here, it's through a source called Empire Flippers. They kind of recommend you go this route. Then there's also like Flippa, which is one of the more popular ones. They usually do like either 12 times the monthly revenue or 2.5 times annual earnings. There's another source called Biz Buy Sell. I've personally been in the middle of a website deal that sold in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, that was close to $1 million sale. And with that sale, it was actually a website that was earning only, earning 400,000. It was about 440,000, and ended up selling for about 795,000. And so it was almost very close to about maybe 1.5 times what their annual earnings were. And so every single business deal is different. And it really boils down to what is your market willing to pay and how desperate are you to actually sell that website asset? Are you ready to move on that much? And the reserve price is more just an idea for you, so you aren't actually underpricing your site. Now, one thing to keep in mind though is if you are in the business of building up these niche sites and trying to sell them, and part of your revenue it really is dependent on if you sell these sites, you may have to actually go low on some of these estimates. You may only do 12 times the monthly revenue, or 12 times or 2.5 times the annual earnings, or you may want to only do like 1.5 times the annual earnings, and that way you're kind of doing a lower price point. It's all about what people are willing to pay. In that same website deal that I've been a middleman on, I've been part of multiple deals, and it's funny to me that you find people that they're not willing to spend $20,000 on a business that somebody else will come around and spend $795,000 on. And it's quite interesting, and it really just proves a point that it just depends on who's buying the website. And I'm going to share with you what places to list your site on. But again, when it comes to pricing your website, it really is going to vary. I'm using this as an idea. You could pick one of these methods and do 3 months your average net profit, so your last 3 months of net profit, and your net profit, I'll explain that on the next slide here. But if you go through these steps, like the 12 times monthly revenue, so that would say whatever your site generated, not a profit, meaning if you were paying for advertising to get that revenue generated, then the advertising expense would come off the actual revenue and you would be left with whatever your profit is. So we're going to say you spent $500 a month in advertisement, and so your net profit was $1,500 again. And you do that method, you are down, 2,000 monthly revenue, your reserve price is 24,000. And if you do the same thing that we did again, and we kind of base it on, kind of a percentage based, but let's say you're spending 150 a month on ads, and right there your reserve would be 3,000. So it just kind of, it really does vary like what method you're going to go with. And for example, you can see especially on the $1,500 level, we had three totally different reserve prices. Some theories are saying, hey, you should sell that website for $30,000 and not any less. Another one is telling you 45,000 and no less. Another one is telling you 24,000 and no less. If you want a quick sale, I would maybe price that asset at $20,000 or $15,000 to $20,000 in that range if you want a super quick sale. This also gives you a good range though. You could actually use all three of these methods and then add them up and then just divide them by 3 to see what the average is for those. So you could take 30, that'd be 75,000, and then 99,000, divide that by 3. That actually gives you $33,000 could be your reserve price. So you just go with a flat 33,000 based on that. And it might sound like crazy talk to you, but it really is when it comes down to website evaluations. And this is just honest off the cuff training. You could talk to 10 different people that evaluate websites, and you're going to probably end up getting 10 different answers from those people as to what a business is worth. And really at the end of the day, it just simply boils down to what are people willing to pay for it? What are they willing to pay for that asset? And it's not like, especially with the buying and selling of website businesses, where they're, it's like real estate where it has to have a minimum price point or else a bank's just not going to finance it and it's not going to make sense. But when it comes to these kind of assets, it's very, there's really no cut and dry answer. There's no set answer on what you should list your business as. I wanted to share these different methods with you though, because these are three of the more popular ways that people list their website when they are trying to come up with a selling price. Here's some other things: defining the important selling points. So when you are selling your website, you do need to know some basic business phrases, and you probably already know these, but I just want to point them out to you. Your net profit, that's what you get to keep after all your bills are paid with your website. So that would include, like if you have an e-commerce website, that would include your cost for inventory or your cost for purchasing products that are then drop shipped out to your customers. That would involve your advertising costs, your outsourcing costs, like what'd you pay for content creation or articles, blogs, infographics, maybe customer support, hosting cost, your autoresponder fees. So that's what your net profit is after all these expenses have been paid. That is your net profit. That is what you're left with. Your revenue is the gross sales, like everything that site makes. Everything that came in, every dollar that came in, that would be the revenue. And so you take the revenue and you subtract the actual expenses from the revenue, and that becomes your net profit. Annual earnings would include the net profit for a 12-month period. So that's the net profit over a 12-month period. And then unique visitors, when you're describing unique visitors, that includes individuals that have seen your site. That is, visitors and unique visitors are totally different things, because oftentimes if you have repeat web visitors, which hopefully you do because that means your content is good, and if you have repeat web visitors, what that basically would indicate is that it's only going to count one time as a unique visitor. So unique visits is really the most important stat people are looking at when they're buying a website business. Impressions are how many times your site's pages were opened. That is what an impression is. So how many times different pages on your site were opened up or that your site was shown. That is what impressions are. They're also known as page views as well. You want to give as many details as possible when you list your site. You want to let people know how it makes money, what your expenses are, what your net profit is at the end of the day. How much money did you get to take home from your business after running it for 12 months? What was your profit? People really do want to know these things. What are your unique visitors? What is their average time on site? And that's where, if you're using tracking tools like Google Analytics, it works really well because you can integrate that when you're selling your business. Just be very specific. Building sites and selling them can actually be an entire business for yourself, and that's called website flipping, which some of you may have heard about.